Hello there folks, and welcome back to another video. In this one we're going to be having a look at the Disciples of Tzeentch, however you want to say it, and their brand new Battletome, and continuing with the trend of 5 things that I think are cool about a particular faction. We've gone and done Lumineth Realm Lords this week. We're now moving on to the Disciples of Tzeentch. As I said in other videos, I'll be going through every single one of the factions for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. Going to come back and have a look at the Stormcast Eternals and the Skaven in a little bit more detail in this format later on, but you can go and check out my thoughts on all of the different factions for one of my favourite fantasy games of the moment. So yes, Disciples of Tzeentch. Let's dive in and have a look at that. Don't forget, as always, to like, share, subscribe, join the membership, check out the affiliate links, all sorts of different things for you to do, but most importantly, get involved in the conversation because I love hearing what you folks have to say. A brand new Battletome for the Disciples of Tzeentch straight away, that threw in a brand new character alongside a few other bits and pieces, so we'll dive in and have a look at that. If you're not familiar with the Disciples of Tzeentch, they are one of the 4 Chaos Gods powers, effectively. So you have Tzeentch, Slaanesh, Khorne and Nurgle. Tzeentch is the trickster god, the planner, the conspirator, as you can see there. They work behind the scenes, in the darkness, in the shadows of the mortal realms, and they plot and ploy, and they work out how they're going to undermine all of the other factions, including their own fellow Chaos Gods, and bring about their own plans and see what power they can gain from doing that. First things first, for this book, I absolutely love this piece of artwork. I said it in the Lumineth Realm Lords one, but I think this is an absolutely stunning piece. I love all the details. I love the change of ways in the background, the various Tzeentchian demons flying around, the blasts of magical energy smashing into settlers gained from all sorts of different points of view. Again, this kind of matches up quite nicely with the Lumineth Realm Lords one. You've also got this this ogre who's sort of panicking as his gunner is ripped from the top of their little protective spot by the various powers that be. Very cool piece of artwork to set things up and give you an idea of the creepiness that comes from playing the Disciples of Tzeentch. But yeah, diving into it, we have the same thing that we've normally got. So you got a little bit of an overview of the Tzeentchian forces, the Disciples of Tzeentch. You have this continued fold-out section. So this is a really nice bit here. This is one of the 5 things, but I'm going to dive into it anyway. This is a really nice section here that kind of looks at a couple of the different areas of the Mortal Realms, different cities and that kind of thing, and what Tzeentch has done in those locations to cause all sorts of kinds of mischief. So this could really lay the groundwork for some fun and interesting stories that you tell. You also have this overview of the realm of metal, of Shaman, as you can see there, which is super cool. So you can dive in and have a look at that and learn a little bit more about it. You've also got a bit of a breakdown on the one side of the Arcanite cults, if you want to go down that route. Or if you want to play around with the scintillating legions and you want to go demon-based, or a mix of the two, you can have a look at that as well. But some really nice background in there, especially for their continued fight against the forces of the kharadron overlords, who are quite a thorn in their side, as we'll see later. Diving deeper into the book, we have a little bit of a bit more background on Tzeentch and how Tzeentch has been sort of manifested over the various years within the mortal realms. One of the coolest things for me, I'm still quite a lover of Silver Tower. In lore and essence rather than mechanics, I suppose, but it's quite a fun little game. This is a breakdown of the kind of Silver Towers and how they fit into things. I really loved this story here in particular. This is one of the things I wanted to draw people's attention to. The Tome Eater's Doom, sorry. So this is a story of how a Eldritch Citadel, one of the Silver Towers, was effectively rocked out of existence by the Seraphon and smashed into a desert below on the ground in the real mortal realms. And so this kind of gives like a really fun kind of place for you to set a battle. Imagine you were building a cool tabletop and you could have a ruined Silver Tower set up across the centre of the battlefield, and you had the Tzeentchian disciples defending it while one of the other armies was attacking it to try and plunder its secrets. I thought that was a super cool little bit of lore and background in there as well, which was quite nice. Again, this isn't one of the 5 things, but I really liked this. The Disciples of Tzeentch really don't like the kharadron overlords. They enjoy the Fire Slayers and the regular dispossessed, the Duardin, because they stay on the ground. They're easy to manipulate. But Tzeentch and the Disciples of Tzeentch have tried to kind of claim the skies of Shaman, of the Realm of Metal, for their own. But the kharadron overlords, when they flew up into the skies, have effectively tried to take over this dominion that the Disciples of Tzeentch have. And so there's some really fun back and forth between the two factions, just to sort of like their internal struggle. I love that there's a cool thing here about the fall of Barak Urbaz, which we actually learned about in the... Was it in the Hellsmith's book, I think, potentially? Or no, the Kharadron Overlords book, of course. And this is sort of like where they're kind of trying to now get their own back, the Kharadron Overlords, against the Disciples of Tzeentch, because they swear that something has probably been going on in the darkness. A really fun book as well, I should say. I love all the additional artwork that's been put in here. It reminds me a lot of the classic Mordheim books and others of that era, for like Necromunda and things like that, where we got to see lots of fun stuff in the margins, a bit of marginalia, which helped to kind of build up the love for a faction and get you thinking and sort of take a little bit more time when you were reading the book, which was quite nice. But yeah, there's a breakdown of how Tzeentch has sort of fit into the wider story for the Mortal Realms, and that kind of breaks down to all the different characters as well. So one of the big characters is Kairos Fateweaver. So he is a brilliant character that's carried over from the world that was, the Architect of Fate, and he has heads that can look into the past and the future, and he's sort of like, he's a fractured sort of take on reality, which really works quite nicely with the Disciples of Tzeentch. And it kind of allows you to play around with some fun ideas, and he's a cool character to get you started. Although this guy, the Changeling, is super cool. So the Changeling is a character that a lot of people will probably know from the world that was, from Warhammer Fantasy Battles and the End Times, going around fiddling in reality and changing things to suit their own desires. The Changeling can take on many different faces within and sort of put on their skin, wear their demeanor, and they can do things that they would do to try and destabilize stuff. Nobody truly knows exactly how the Changeling has put together their plans or what they're trying to do, but they always do something interesting that kind of will change things to suit Tzeentch and the overall grand plan. I really liked this kind of description here, this story, so I want to read it in its full. So, the Changeling has been known by 1,000 or more titles in his long existence. To the Uruk tribes of Antdor and Tor, he was the one-eyed Uruk, a seer of Gorkamorka, who always knew where their wargs should roam. The reckless policies of Guildmaster Guthrin almost bankrupted Barak Zilfin during the First Gold Crisis, while citizens of Vindikarim still curse the name of General Latosh, the traitor of Ironwall. Yet the Changeling's most prized mask is that of Valius Meliti, foremost architect-engineer of the Dominion of Sigmar. Meliti's esoteric designs changed the face of the God-King cities forever and left them vulnerable to Tzeentch's machinations whenever he decides to play that hand. Really cool, awesome lore. Very fun character, really plays into the vibe of Tzeentch, and I can't wait to see where that goes in the future. Hopefully they remember that narrative hook. Something fun to build your army around potentially there. A little bit more of a breakdown of the various troops. I will say it is a bit of a shame that we didn't get new and updated models for things like the horrors and stuff like that. I do think there are a lot of figures within the Disciples of Tzeentch that could do with a little bit of a breath of fresh air, just to kind of bring them up in line with the rest of the Warhammer Age of Sigmar line. But if you are somebody who's looking for something a little bit fun and quirky to paint, this is definitely worth having a look at. This is another thing, it's a little bit of a duo that I really enjoy. So I love the Curseling. Again, this comes from the world that was. He is a being where the soul of a mortal has been latched onto that of a demon, and it's turned them into a terrifying killer that goes around destroying everything that they can, which I think is really cool. I love this sort of like kind of Tzeentchian champion who's a blending of two different ideas. It very much reminds me of the Lore Seekers that we saw in the Lumineth Realm Lords, these kind of spell swords. And he's a fun little addition to this battle tome, and it's nice to see them still there. The Ogroid Thaumaturges as well, we'll talk about them in a little bit more detail later, but they were just a miniature that was included in Silver Tower back when that came out. They have some really fun stuff. They're Ogroids that hunt down mages and absorb them so that they can gain their power, which I think is super cool. You also have the new miniature that was added for this edition, which is the Fate Master. So if you're looking for another mortal leader for you to use in your tabletop, definitely go and check them out and add them into the mix. Great to use alongside your Kharadron acolytes on the tabletop. But again, a lot of the stuff that you'll be familiar with is in here as well. So you've got things like the Zangors and all that kind of thing too, if you want to paint up some Tzeentchian Beastmen. You also have the Warcroll Warband, the Jade Obelisk. They're here as well, so if you're looking to make use of them after Warcry, then you can use them in your games as well, alongside things like the Kharadron acolytes and stuff too there, which is quite nice. The new Argent Shards are a sort of really cool sort of like spell pylons you can use in your games. They effectively work as conduits on the battlefield for your arcane abilities, which is quite nice. Fun to see them around, and if one just gets destroyed, the other one can split apart and turn into another one. So you've always got this magical threat going on, which I think is quite nice. Lots of cool stuff for them going into the rules side of things as well. I really like all the stuff that they've done for that. Some cool ways to build your force in various ways. Lots of things that play around with fate points and that kind of thing. Building up that fate point pool can then be used to enact some crazy abilities with some of the various characters and things like that. So if you're looking for a slightly more involved force, a little bit more like the Lumineth Realm Lords, then you can come and have a look at the Disciples of Tzeentch. I won't pretend that I know the best things to do with all of these armies, but if you are somebody who's looking to play around with a more magic-focused force, this is definitely one for you to have a look at. And of course, lots of spells to choose from, as you would have imagined. The Law of Fate and the Law of Change, and also your manifestations as well. And then, of course, we have all of the various war scrolls for your characters. So Kairos Fate Weaver, the Lord of Change, the Changeling himself. I love this. It's so good. So yes, he can use another character on the battlefield to act as a conduit for his spells because he's taken over their identity. And there's also the Whispers of Treachery thing where you can do it on an enemy. On a casting roll of a 2d6 on a 7, they basically just attack each other. So you roll a dice for each model in the target unit for each 5 plus inflict 1 mortal damage on the target. So they basically start stabbing each other because someone dissed someone, and it was actually just a changeling cackling away in the background. Super cool. All of your demon stuff there as well, including your pink horrors and the blue and brimstones. And yes, they still split, which is super fun. Gaunt summoners there. You got one of them on a disc and one of them on foot. So if you've got one of those miniatures hanging around from Silver Tower, good for you. The new Fate Master is also in there too. So if you want to have a look at their rules and see when they work for you, make sure to pause the video and dive in there. Ogroid Thaumaturges, here we can learn a little bit more about their rules. So they're pretty cool anyway, but they have some really fun abilities. So the Thaumaturgic Hunger. This unit can move 6 inches. It can move into combat and must end that move close to the caster. If the unit was in combat at the start of the turn, blah, 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 blah. But basically, an opponent declares a spell ability within for a unit within 30 inches. He can basically hunt down mages. And then, when he does that, if any damage points were allocated to an enemy wizard or priest by this unit's attacks this turn, and their enemy unit has been destroyed, heal 7 the target, so he goes back up to 8, and then add 1 to this unit's power level for the rest of the battle, so he can cast even more spells. How cool is that? If you could pull that off, it would be brilliant, I think, indeed. So yes, very cool. All of your Zangor stuff is in there as well, so you can dive in and have a look at that. Kharadron Acolytes, the Jade Obelisk, and the Chaos Spawns of Tzeentch. Very nice indeed. And of course, your manifestations. And the new Argent Shards, which looks super awesome. I'm going to see a lot of people playing around with those in Thousand Suns tabletops, I think. You have your new Spearhead, which is the Zangor Warflock, which I think is a really nice little set of miniatures there. If you're going to go down the Zangor route, you could really paint up Tzeentch and the Disciples of Tzeentch, I think, with contrast paints. And it would look brilliant. You want things to look lurid and over the top, and this would definitely do the job on that front. So yeah, breakdown of how they work, and of course their Spearhead rules that are there as well for you to dive into. The Path to Glory is in there as well. You will always find the Path to Glory in the back of one of the battle tomes, which is nice to see. So if you're going down the narrative route, you can play around with that and have some fun. The Path of Madness or the Path of Mutation. And then you have a couple of Armies of Renown. You have this one, which is based around the Warpflock Arcanites, so it's the sort of like your cult. This one, however, is my favourite. I love Kairos Fateweaver. Really cool character, and so it's nice to have a force based around him. It's based around Kairos Fateweaver and basically demons, which is the way for them to go. So if you're looking to play around with an interesting demonic faction, and that's the route you want to go, Kairos Fateweaver is definitely one to have a look at with the Oracles of Fate. He has the Master of Destiny, which allows him to do different things with his Destiny dice, which is quite nice. And then, of course, he has his own heroic traits and things that you can give to various demons within your collection, and have some fun with that. You then have the Seekers of Silver, which is a really fun little quirky addition, but my favourite is the Mask of the Deceiver, who can work with literally anybody, as you can see there, and then he gets this, which is his fun new set of abilities and a stat line as well. I am really tempted to get a Mask of the Deceiver and throw him into my armies. I just think it'd be super fun to play around with, and see what you could do with him. Could be really nice, and a good way to add another wizard and a wizard 2 into your force, I think. But yeah, very cool. And of course, a little rules reference at the back as well. So yes, some cool stuff on that front for the Disciples of Tzeentch. As always, please dive in and tell me what you think of them. I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to fully embrace this Battletome. I wasn't sure whether I was going to find anything that I thought was cool about it. But after reading through some of the stories and some of the little bits of lore that we've got in here, alongside all the various unit profiles as well, I think the Disciples of Tzeentch have turned out to be a fun faction once again. And it just goes to show that the Mortal Realms has really expanded, and Games Workshop are doing a really good job with them as a faction, and well, all the other factions in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, I think. Yeah, there's always something cool for you to dive into with the faction, even if you're not a fan of the models. For one faction, you can find something that would work for you in another. So yeah, let me know what you think about them in the comments down below. As always, this is just 5 things that I think are cool about the Disciples of Tzeentch. Please let me know what you think is cool. Make sure to do all the fun stuff, like, share, subscribe, but most importantly, do your comments, because I love getting to a dialogue with you. Dive into this one yourself. Let me know what you think. Is it going to be something you're going to be picking up? Are you going to be making a demon army? Please let me know. And yeah, I'll be back with another video very, very soon. Bye for now.